Rolling Stone published this article yesterday. All week long, a culture war has been raging around country star Jason Aldean's Try That in a Small Town, a turgid power ballad wrapped around an unsubtle warning to protesters and other outsiders. Try that in a small town, see how far you make it down the road, quoting the song. To many observers, that sounds uncomfortably close to the kind of threat that the Klan used to issue to civil rights activists and that modern-day racists continue to spout today. The music video, which juxtaposes stock footage of Canadian protesters with scenes set at the site of a 1927 lynching, didn't help dispel that impression. Scholars have noted the obvious parallels. Oh, the scholars. We've heard from so the scholars have chimed in on this pop song, and they've noticed the uncomfortable parallels between Try That in a Small Town and white nationalist ideology. Aldean claims he's just singing about community and neighborly harmony. But here's where we get to the good part. The article says, some right-wing trolls, though, don't want you to think too hard about any of that. They'd rather talk about rap music. Alleged Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy is moaning about Ice-T's 1992 song Cop Killer and sex and violence in hip-hop. Frequent hate-monger Matt Walsh whines that nearly every rap song for the past 30 years has directly and enthusiastically glorified murder, drug dealing, robbery, and every other violent crime, and these people say nothing. True. TV comedian turned far-right fringe voice Roseanne Barr got in on the act, too, with a salty tweet about gangster rap. This is a familiar pattern, Rolling Stone says, to anyone who's paid attention to the past few decades of conservative punditry. When the heat gets too high on the right wing, they try to change the subject to hip-hop. It's why when shock jock Don Imus was under fire for his nasty racist remarks about the Rutgers women's basketball team in 2007, some people wanted to talk about rappers' language instead. It's why Bill O'Reilly, okay, so we're going. So they're accused, so I like he's accusing us of changing the subject and bringing up the ancient past. And then he goes immediately to Don Imus and Bill O'Reilly. Examples from 2007 and 2003, respectively. But this is always the game, is to say, oh, well, this is whataboutism, you're changing the subject. No, we're not changing the subject. Yeah, yes, it is a whatabout, but guess what? Whatabout arguments are completely valid. Yes, maybe we've attached ism to it, but that doesn't mean that it's not valid. So, yes, all a whatabout argument does, it's a way of establishing that this principle that you're espousing, you don't apply consistently. So you have stated a principle, you've made a statement, you've applied it to this one very localized area, and we're saying, well, what about all these things over here that this would also apply to? What about those? Part of the what about is to try to get to what you're actually saying. What point are you actually trying to make? So on this topic, on the left and in the media, they're pretending to be terribly scandalized by violence, by violent rhetoric in a song, right? And they're worried about what it might encourage people to do and what it might provoke. They're saying things like the song is dangerous. And what we're saying is, okay, if you're worried about violent lyrics in songs, what about all of this stuff over here? What about like almost every rap song that's ever been made? There's a lot of violence there, and it's much more explicit. And we laid this out a few days ago. Not only is it much more explicit, but whereas Jason Aldean, if he's encouraging violence at all or talking about it in a favorable way, he's talking about violence in defense of the innocent, violence in defense of your community, violence in self-defense, which, yeah, those are all good kinds of violence. Not all violence is made equal. Not all violence is bad. Violence in defense of the innocent, violence in defense of yourself, that is good. It's a good form of violence. It's not good that it comes to that, but it is good to defend yourself and defend the innocent. So that's what he's talking about. Whereas the big difference with violence in a lot of rap songs is that while it's being explicitly promoted and glorified by people who, by the way, oftentimes have actually engaged in this kind of violence themselves and are bragging about it, On top of that, the violence they're talking about is not violence in defense of the innocent or in defense of anyone, even self-defense. It's violence just to prove how tough you are. It's violence, it's violence motivated by greed. You're robbing someone. It's violence motivated by just pure indifference to human life. So it is entirely valid for us to say, well, if you have an issue with violence in music, why are you giving all of that a pass? So you're proposing that something is a problem. You're skipping over all of the worst examples of that problem. And you're sifting through all of that. You're digging through all of it. You're discarding, it doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, until you find this one little thing to pin the whole issue on. That's what we're pointing out. Because if we are going to have any kind of meaningful conversation about violence in music, violence in media, that could be a worthwhile conversation. But it's not a worthwhile conversation if we don't get the full picture first. If we don't get the full picture of what we're dealing with. Now, I could go on here, but I'm not going to. This Rolling Stone article, do they get to the point in the article of actually dealing with these comparisons, like explaining? So you're upset about the Jason Aldean thing. You don't care about any of this stuff with the rap music. Why is that? Why is all of that violent rhetoric in like literally thousands of rap songs through the decades? Why is all of that okay? And it doesn't concern you, and you never bring it up. He never gets around to engaging with that question or answering it, of course, because there is no answer. All they can do is point at what we're saying and say, "Whataboutism doesn't count." Oh, you see, if you bring up our hypocrisy and our double standards, then it is automatically invalid to bring up our hypocrisy and double standards. Very convenient. It's clear that the left is giving up their morals and any common sense. There's no better time than to build a daily habit of prayer and meditation. Building a habit of prayer can help you cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Focusing on what you're thankful for can increase positive emotions and improve overall well-being. Hallow is the #1 Christian prayer app in the U.S. It's helped me maintain a daily prayer routine, and it can help you do the same. Download the app for free at hallow.com/Matt Walsh. You can set prayer reminders and track your progress along the way. Not sure where to start? Well, check out Father Mike Schmitz's Bible in a Year podcast, available on the Hallow app, or you can pray alongside Mark Wahlberg, Jim Caviezel, even world-famous athletes as well. With Hallow, you can customize a personal prayer plan that works for you. Listen wherever you are with downloadable offline sessions. Using Hallow to connect with others who share your beliefs and values can provide a sense of belonging, support, and foster a sense of community. Ultimately, we'll learn how we can become better individuals in spite of today's broken world as we strive to become more like Christ in our daily lives through prayer, fasting, and giving. Download Hallow at hallow.com/Matt Walsh. You get an exclusive 3 months free. That's 3 months absolutely free at hallow.com/Matt Walsh. Not a lot of insight there, but maybe if we go to The View. The View had dealt with this Jason Aldean song yesterday, and let's listen to what they had to say. Maybe they'll have something more intelligent to offer. We can always hope.
This was, to me, something where about half the people in my life see it one way and half the people in my life see it a different way. So I'm trying to kind of see what are we disconnecting on. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that his intent wasn't to, stoke division, glorify violence or racism. I'm going to give him that benefit of the doubt. I don't know. But I'll say this. There was a line. So for the many folks who are offended by this, there's a line in it that says, try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Around here, we take care of our own. So for a lot of my friends and family who are legal gun owners in small communities, they're like, yeah, that's what we do if someone breaks into a store. He's talking about the right to defend yourself. What I thought of when I read that was Ahmaud Arbery. I think of a black man in a small town in the South who literally just got shot for doing nothing wrong. So I think what becomes problematic is that there's a lack of recognition of what this means to about 50% of the country whose experience isn't Jason Aldean's. I like him. I've always liked his music. I'm kind of a country gal about a quarter of the time. But this is also for the folks on the right who are defending this. They see the BLM riots, I think many can acknowledge, protests and riots, that George Floyd's death and murder was evil. It was wrong. It was unacceptable. But so was the killing of someone like David Dorn, a black retired police officer who was defending his friend's store and was shot during the riots and aftermath of that movement. So I think if people of good faith can see both sides, they can see there is an issue with this song because of what it means to a lot of communities, but there is an issue of violence, of looting, of rioting.
Yes, but why are you linking it to black people?
Well, that's
that's the issue.
That's the issue. The imagery is what becomes very problematic.
Well, once again, there's. I guess we gave it a shot. We gave it a shot to see if there's anything insightful being said on The View, but apparently there isn't. A long conversation, though, went on for a long time. In every major media outlet, all the shows have been talking about this. Yeah, once again, you're not going to find this kind of conversation about any other violent form of music, which is a shame, because, as I said, this is actually a worthwhile conversation to have. And you could throw Jason Aldean's song into it. I'm fine. No, I think his song is fine. I don't particularly like the songs, and it's not something I'm going to listen to myself. I just don't enjoy how it sounds. The message is fine. But if you want to have a broader discussion about, okay, well, you have violence that's portrayed in movies and in TV shows. It comes up in music, in many different contexts. When is it a bad thing that we should be worried about? When is it good? Is it always bad? Or is it always fine? Is it never bad? These are all things that we can talk about. But we can't do that when you've just decided to to take all the worst examples of this and to give them all a pass. That's when it doesn't work. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.